Bum bum bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum bum. Hey Peter. Hey everybody. Come on in. I am coming to you today from my man cave at Dilber Central. And I'm going to share with you, 1,000 people. Do you have your beverage? I'm doing afternoon coffee, but some of you I know might be a little too late for coffee, but join me anyway in the simultaneous sip. So if you've been following me for a while, and especially if you have read Win Bigly, you know that I make a provocative claim that reality is somewhat subjective, and we all have our own filters or our own movies going on in our heads. And that the only way you can tell which is the good version, in other words, the movie that you should consider the real reality versus other people who are maybe hallucinating in a different way, is whether or not your filter on reality does two things. Does it make you happy? And does it do a good job of predicting? So I've made a number of notable predictions in the past to make the case that if you learn persuasion and you start seeing the world as irrational people being persuaded, as opposed to a filter in which you see people as, rational players who look at facts and make decisions, you'll be very unhappy and you'll be very bad at predicting the future if you imagine people are smart and that they make rational decisions. So compare my model, where everybody's irrational, but persuasion is the main variable in the world in terms of human decision making. So I'm going to talk about the Middle East, and I'm going to put the persuasion filter on it, and I want to make the case that there's something very special happening that might be an opening for something really good not very long from now. And I'll go through this using persuasion as the main theme so that you can see it through that filter. And I'll make a few confessions right off the bat. Number one, I don't know much about the Middle East. So I may have, spelled things wrong. I may be leaving out important countries. I may forget which religion somebody's got. So bear with me here. This is a work in progress. It's a field I don't know anything about, but I'm still going to put the persuasion filter on and then make a quasi-prediction. It's a little less than a prediction, but maybe it's a sign of optimism. And it goes like this. I'm going to show you the main architecture that's happening right now. And I left out a number of countries just because they're not relevant to the story I'm going to tell. So it's not like Jordan and Turkey are not important, but for this story, they don't have much of a plus or minus in terms of how they're going to influence things. So let me go through this and show you how the elements of this complicated Middle East architecture are, by complete coincidence, just starting to click into place to create an opportunity that maybe has never been there before. So let me go through the argument, and then once you've seen it all, don't dwell too much on any part of it. Look at the big picture, right? We've got this weird situation where this Khashoggi guy was apparently murdered in the Turkish embassy. And this has put a great deal of pressure on Saudi Arabia because they're being accused of doing this brutal murder that's very inappropriate. Now, what's important is that they have this new crown prince, Prince Salman, right? And he's a young guy. He's very bold. He's willing to do things that other people wouldn't have done, frankly. So you've got, first of all, an opportunity in that he's a personality who wants to do stuff, right? He's obviously an active ruler. He wants to change. He wants to reform. He wants to fix. He wants Saudi Arabia to be important. And then this scandal happens. And he gets, pressure from the United States, pressure from the rest of the world. And now he kind of needs to do something big to secure his safety and credibility as the head of the country. So he might be able to hold on to power no matter what, but I have a feeling that Saudi Arabia is not a dictatorship like some places are, but rather more like a corporation where the family is a de facto board of directors and they select a member of the family. He was selected. I have a feeling that he really needs the support within his own country to really remain the leader. So there's a lot of pressure on this young guy who has apparently a lot of boldness, and he's willing to be a reformer, willing to go where other people would not go. So I'm just going to call that flexible. He's currently flexible in a way that maybe we haven't seen before. All right. Saudi Arabia is in a sort of a proxy war with Iran. They're backing different sides in this Yemen war. The United States has recently decided to stop refueling or helping with the refueling, so we're putting pressure on Saudi Arabia to get something taken care of. So it looks like Yemen, because Iran is getting bled dry. Now here's the important thing: Iran is getting poorer, and probably at a rate they've never seen before. Now keep in mind that the direction of things is very important, because if you're Iran and the direction that you can see forever is just things getting worse, and that's probably what they see right now. If things stay the same for Iran, it's just going to get worse forever. So they have sort of a time constraint. They need to do something. They need to fix something. They need to change something pretty soon. So it's the soon that's the important part. So I think that Iran has enough reasons to get out of this war. Saudi Arabia has enough reasons with our pressure on them. Nobody really wants to be in a war anyway. So there may be a chance, and this would be the key to the whole puzzle, for these guys to stop being on the other side in Yemen. Now the blue lines here are sort of the political lines of influence, and then the USA, is putting pressure on Iran economically. So recently we saw that Egypt was just helpful in trying to broker a deal between Hamas and Israel. So here's another key part, that Egypt is a helpful player, that Hamas is sort of in a position where they need something to go right. So if something could be presented that made it look like a win, they're probably ready, right? Because things aren't getting better for them. Things are not getting better for Iran, their sponsor. It's got to be tough to be Hamas at the same time that Israel is just getting stronger on every dimension. So if Israel is getting stronger every day with really no end in sight, and Iran is getting weaker every day with no end in sight, that speaks to both of them, being ready for something to happen. So you've got productive people in between two entities that have a reason to work things out, if only they could figure out how. It's always that how do you figure out how part that's the hard part. Then, of course, you've got Russia that you can count on to follow their self-interest, which is good, because probably following their self-interest means that they're not being dogmatic. If there's a deal to be had, they might say yes if it's good for them, and why wouldn't it be? All right, and then you've got this weird situation of a President Trump who's a deal maker who could probably go to places other people can't go. He could probably threaten people more than people have been threatened. He could probably surprise people in ways they haven't been surprised. He can shake the box in ways that has never been shaken. So I want you to imagine the following leaders in the same room. Just get a mental picture of this, right? Just for kicks, imagine them in the same room. President Trump, all right, get that picture in your head. Putin, Netanyahu, all right, so now it's Trump, Putin, and Netanyahu. Just picture them. And then Prince Salman. Put them all in a room, and now imagine them together. Could those four people work together? Yeah, they could, right? Just think of their personalities. That's 4 people who could make a deal and have an interest in making a deal. They all have a great interest in making sure that it's a stable region. So we've never had 4 personalities like that are all capable of making a deal. They're all flexible. They're all fairly pragmatic. They're more visionary than people before in lots of different ways. So probably you have the right players for the first time. You have this external weird situation that causes more flexibility than normal. You've got Iran that really needs to make something happen because it's only going in the wrong direction forever, and they must know that at some point. And you've got Israel getting stronger, which means that the sooner these guys settle, the sooner they can at least make their own lives better, because nothing's going to happen to Israel. It's just getting stronger. And you've got Egypt being helpful. I'm sure, Jordan would be helpful. Turkey would probably play some role. There are other countries that have money, etc. Now, anybody who predicts, it's going to be a Middle East peace in 3 months, that would be a foolish prediction, because it would be the one place that's hardest to imagine there could ever be peace. But I'll make this one observation. It's possible that we've never been closer. This might be as close as you can get to an ideal setup where you can get something done. Now, here's another concept that a President Trump would understand that not everybody would. And it's something I've said before, and it's a concept of negotiating. If you're negotiating a small deal between 2 entities, and you can't get the deal done, there's just no way to make a deal that you can see, sometimes it helps to add in new variables. So you might be talking, I'll pay you money for your product, but you can't reach a price. So you add in something else. All right, I'll give you money and I'll help you advertise. All right. So adding variables when you've got a standoff is generally good. So instead of looking at the Middle East as something that Israel and Hamas have to work out, you end up looking at the whole system, and you've introduced this whole bunch of variables. Now, what happens when you've got this many variables in your situation? Well, in most cases, in the normal world, the more you complicate things, the less likely it's going to work out. If this were an engineering project, you'd say, whoa, that's the wrong direction. If you add variables, if you add specifications, if you add complexity, it's much worse. Keep it simple if you can. But in the very specific world of trying to reach a deal internationally, it might actually be an advantage to add as many variables in here and try to get something that really just settles a lot of stuff at the same time. It might go to where capitals are, it might go to who's funding Yemen, it might go to what's up with Hamas, it might go to security, it might go to, nuclear weapons. Just throw it all in there. Now, in a normal situation, you would never get anybody to agree when you have that many variables. It would just be too hard to negotiate with that much stuff. The only way that could work is if you have some kind of leader who is tested and knows how to create simple stories and of complicated situations. Somebody who can reach into the complexity, find not only where the money matters, but the emotions matter, where people can be persuaded and where they can't, where the complexity could be ignored even if it's important to get to where you need to go, where you could be morally flexible where you need to get to a greater good. You would need somebody so unique that sort of person could only come around once in a lifetime. Do you see it? So, I've laid it out here, and you've seen that by weird coincidence, not really anybody's great work or anything like that, just by coincidence, it looks to me like a lot of stuff is lining up for exactly the players who are important in this world. Yeah, and somebody said in the comments, Jared. So, Jared is sort of the silent, broker behind the curtain, and he's obviously got, crazy good connections. It looks like he's a strong player who could make everything pull together, if anybody could. I don't know if anybody could. So I'm not going to say this is a prediction, because predicting peace in the Middle East would be not the smartest thing anybody ever did, right? Because the odds are always against it. I'm only going to say that we've never had this situation before. This is special, and maybe it matters. All right. I would love to hear your feedback on this. Tell me if you think this is crazy, and if you could put a reason, a short reason in there, that would be good. You don't have to do details, but, give me a sense of what part of it you think is weak. Not crazy. Yeah, it's not crazy, right? Haven't accounted for China? I don't know that I need to. The oil price drop supports my observation. You are correct. The drop in oil prices makes everybody a little more flexible, especially Iran, I would think. It's too easy for one party to play the others. That's the big risk, of course. It's crazy because the Palestinians don't want a deal. Does anybody not want a deal? Here's the thing. If you thought Israel was vulnerable and that you really had an actual chance of destroying Israel, if you thought that was possible, you might dig in and do everything you could, sacrifice, live in bad conditions, take risks, do whatever you can if it was your religion or your cultural belief that you had to destroy Israel. But at some point, no matter how much you want to destroy Israel, you're going to realize that they're getting more powerful every day. Time is not on your side, and you're not getting closer to destroying them, you're getting further away. So there is a point where you realize it just can't happen. So what you're doing, if you're Hamas and you're the leaders over there, you're killing your people, you're living in poverty, and you don't have any chance, just no chance, of realistically getting what you think you want, which is some kind of revenge or taking over Israel or wiping them out or whatever it is that you think you want to do. So I think we're there with a little bit of pressure. Now, one of the keys that I talk to you about all the time is that sometimes in order to make a deal, both sides have to have a story they can tell their own people in which they're the winners. So the ideal situation is that both sides can tell their side why they're the winners. In North Korea, that situation is shaping up. Kim can tell his people, hey, I'm unifying the North Korea. My nukes really work out for me because it got me all these concessions. So he's got a story. We, of course, have our story, which is, no more nukes in North Korea, right? So everybody can have a win. I think what's been lacking with Hamas is they didn't have a way to win. There was no way to spin this thing into a victory. And here's what I would suggest. If Hamas is part of a larger picture for something really good in the Middle East, and it's tied to specific economic benefits, then suddenly they have something that they can shape as a win. And that win might be, let's say, access to holy sites, or who's in charge of holy sites. They might say, well, we got that. It's a good thing we put that pressure on Israel. Maybe it's something about travel or water rights. Maybe it's about economic development from other countries, maybe Saudi Arabia. So you can imagine a whole bunch of variables going in which at least the leaders of Hamas can say this would be good for our people, or there's enough money to bribe them or kill them or coerce them. Because if you've got all of the other countries saying, all right, the only thing stopping us is about a dozen of you leaders in Hamas, that's the only thing that's stopping the entire Middle East from having some stability, It's like 12 guys. You 12 guys, I'm pretty sure if every country in the world wanted them to cooperate, they could find a way. All right, because Hamas doesn't have nuclear weapons. So I'm not talking about militarily, but they could be bribed, they could be convinced, they could be patriots for their country and just take the best deal they can get. Hamas needs a leader that can declare victory, right? And it does seem to me that they could declare some form of victory in some way. There have to be enough variables where they can walk off saying, look what I did, this is way better. All right. I'm just looking at your comments now. Comments. Would Bolton be on board? Well, the beauty of the complexity, if you keep it complicated, is that everybody has a reason to like it and everybody has a reason to not like it. That's what complexity gives you. It allows everybody to see their own movie. So if you need everybody to see their own movie, this is the way to do it. Just throw enough stuff in there that nobody really understands what's going on. And in that world, a President Trump is the most influential voice because he operates in that world where people are confused and overwhelmed and there's too much complexity, and he'll boil it down to its simplest element and sell the crap out of it. All right. I'm going to end it here and keep it short. Thanks for joining me in my man cave. One more simultaneous sip. Afternoon coffee. Join me for a toast. And now, have a good night.